Right. Okay. So, welcome everyone to parents, fellow counselors, and uh, to our session expert today, to Chirag. So, for those of you who don't know us, my name is Ramya Modukuri, and along with me in the other guiding teens box here is my friend and partner, Sapna Goel. We are both counselors who are running this platform, Guiding Teens. It is a non-commercial parent community. Which is meant to empower parents of teenagers, typically aged 13 to 18, in making better informed college and career decisions. And all of our sessions are recorded and are also freely available on our website, www.guidingteens.in. At the end and sometime in between, I will also share, we have a pretty vibrant WhatsApp community where parents can learn from each other. We do request that counselors, unless you're a parent, it's not really useful for you to join that. I mean, you're welcome to, but we would prefer to keep that a safe space for our parent community because sometimes we have had consultants join and try to sell their services, and we really don't appreciate that because we are doing this on a non-commercial basis. So that's a little about us, but on to today's session. So we're really thrilled to have Mr. Chirag Khutia. Mr. Chirag is India's top career coach for students planning for a career in medicine. He has successfully guided over 50,000 plus students to choose their right career path. He has 16 plus years of experience in international medical education domain, working with companies like Kaplan and Becker Healthcare. He has extensively traveled to USA and his students have successfully matched into residency and fellowship programs in the US. And he has delivered the career in medicine sessions at 350 plus medical colleges across India. And he believes in pursue excellence and success will follow. I had the honor of hearing a session at a Careers 360 event, and it simply blew me away. It was really eye-opening. So we hope that you will also walk away with this session with a lot of good information and insights. So with that, over to you, Chirag.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Ramya, for this kind introduction and Sapna for hosting me today. I'll quickly share my screen. Just confirm if uh, my screen is visible. All right. Are you able to see the screen?
I'm not able to see it
Okay.
yet. Okay, now we can.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So normally what happens is in such sessions, it is just about certain admission criterias and the steps involved in maybe registration of examinations. But what I would like to focus would be the key points to be taken in mind, keeping career in medicine as a whole. When I say career in medicine, it involves both UG and PG. And the very reason I say is, because in 2023, there was a viral post. It was about GTB hospital in Delhi, where there were 20 positions for junior doctor position, meaning anybody who is an MBBS graduate can join that particular job. And there were more than 500 doctors which turned up for that job position. And then obviously it blew up, and the question in minds of people was that is MBBS becoming the new BTech? Because post 2014, lot of new medical colleges have also started up. The aim of the government is every district has a district hospital, which ultimately will be transferred and made a medical college. So are we ready in terms of infrastructure? That's the question. And obviously, if you're looking to study outside India, the regulations which have changed, in the last few years, this is what I will try to kind of cover, and obviously open to any questions which any one of you have. So quick disclaimer, I'll be as transparent and as honest as possible. So if at any point of time you feel like that, but it is purely intentional because this is the reality. Yeah. So first question, which is very, very common, because especially when I, interact with parents who are, like their kids are studying in IB boards, that is NEET UG mandatory? A student doesn't want to kind of pursue medicine in India. So is NEET UG optional? So the answer is no. NEET UG is kind of mandatory. Even if you wish to study MBBS outside India, and keeping in mind the geopolitics and things which are happening, at any point of time, if you want to come back and practice in India, it will be important that before you fly off, you have to appear for the NEET UG exam. Get yourself something called as an eligibility certificate from the National Medical Commission. So these two things are kind of mandatory, and only then, you should pursue MBBS abroad. So this is something which, as a rule, came out in 2018, that any students who studies MBBS outside India still have to write the NEET exam. Now, when you say the score range of NEET UG, it's basically between 0 to 120. And the ranges of, high score, when we talk about open categories, to 20, which is like a decent score for anybody to get into a top government medical school. So 600 to 720 would be a good government med school. An average score is about 300 to 600, which will land you into a good medical private med school, or an average government med school, or for that matter, in some states, average private medical school. Obviously comes the highest or low score, but if you are into some quota, so there are a lot of specific reservation based quota, then if your scores are between 300 to 500, still you land up a medical college seat in India. And finally, obviously, there's something called as qualified. Now, this is very important, that when, even if you want to go abroad or study in India, one mandatory requirement, again by the NMC, is that you should at least qualify the NEET exam. So fortunately, unfortunately, still there are cases where students have not been advised, and those who are unqualified and have went ahead with the joining an MBBS program outside India, those students will never be allowed to kind of practice back in India. So it's not just appearing for the NEET, but you have to at least qualify with a mandatory qualifying marks, which ranges between 134 to about 144. That's the score range at which people qualify for the NEET examination. So with that, again, specific to colleges, there are standard, these days in the world of AI, there are a lot of I would say tools available where we can figure out what were the last year cutoffs. But broadly, these are the ranges. And when we talk about the quality, because since I also majorly travel to medical colleges across India, one firm belief I have that not every government college is good, and vice versa. Not every private college is bad. Just because it's a private does not mean it's not good. So we have to be very careful in terms of just blindly because it's a government college and just taking an admission will not serve our purposes. And what will be the parameters? That is what we'll be discussing in the next few slides. So moving ahead, if you are planning to study MBBS outside India, the National Medical Commission have come up with FMGL 2021 guidelines. Now these are, very much, I would say, firm in terms of whatever are their requirements. And just to reiterate, year on year, National Medical Commission is regularly posting on their platform a reminder kind of a thing that this is what they mentioned in 2021, because what happens is the first batch who has entered in 2021 will start coming back to India in 2026. So the real, I would say, challenge would be to handle those at least 20 to 30,000 students who have gone outside, and most of them would not be allowed to kind of work in India. So this is something we have to understand very clearly, in terms of what are the actual criteria. So first is obviously the course duration have to be 54 months. That's the bare minimum in terms of the requirement, because that's how even our Indian medical colleges teach. So you have like 4.5 years of theory and then 1 year of an intern. So the NMC wants just to replicate those 54. which straight away means, country like Philippines, which mimic the American or Canadian medical system, have a 4 year of an MD, that's the 48 months of MD program, will no longer be recognized as per the current, basically NMC guidelines. Then we talk about language of instruction of the program have to be only in English. You know, there are major colleges in Russia, in China, in a lot of the CIS countries where the courses are bilingual. For initial basic medical science, the first 3 years teaching happens in English, and moment you enter the clinical years, it happens in the local language. So those degrees again might not be recognized. Internship in the same institution. This is again a very important point. Like, it is obvious in India that we assume that, and that's how the infrastructure is, that you cannot start a medical school unless you have the basic requirements of infrastructure. But that's not the case outside India. So you should have a attached hospital within the same medical college. So there are models where people could do their MBBS in China and then just of medical schools in Georgia, more like a coaching center, where in one place in Tbilisi there are about 14, 15 colleges, and every student would go to a common place for doing internship. Now those degrees will not be recognized. Whichever med school a student gets into, they should have at least 12 months of internship in their own college. Second, obviously, the total maximum time to get license. Now, this is very important that student, they complete their grade 12 in a particular year and, have, let's say, given the NEET UG. Moment you enter a medical school, let's say your first year of medical school, that's what NMC considered as the start date of your medicine program. From then on, the student have to complete, if they want a license to work in India, the licensure process within 10 years. So the reason why this is important, because let's say if they go to a European country, let's say Russia or any of the CIS, the program is for 6 years. Followed by, once they come back, they will have to write an exit examination like an FMG, which only happens twice a year. So maybe June, December, June, December. So maximum they get 3 years or 6 attempts to give. Because after this, FMG license exam, they have to do a 1 year of compulsory internship within India. So technically, this 10 years is like 9 years until you complete the FMG, and then you do 1 year of internship. Only then you can kind of work it. So this is again a very,
Chirag,
yeah.
your voice is breaking a bit. There's some network issue.
Oh, is it?
It's okay usually, but it breaks in bits and pieces.
Maybe you can
Uh,
switch off your camera and just do the
yeah,
audio.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe I can try that. Is it better now?
Yeah, at least
Okay,
now it's.
okay, all right. So yeah, so what I was trying to say is that the total duration to get a license to practice in India is 10 years. So we also have to be accounted that once you pursue an undergrad program, you do an exit examination, and then you get a license to practice in India, followed by an intern. So these are criterias which again we have to kind of keep in mind when we will be deciding on a country or a course. And then obviously the final and the most important is the license to practice in the host country. There are videos, coming up from the parliament itself, where our, union health minister also mentioned that, if you are going to pursue a MBBS from a country where you just have a degree, and if that particular country does not allow you to get a license to practice in that country, why would you be allowed to be practicing in India? So this is very important. I'll give you one perspective. For example, let's say we consider a country like China. It meets exact criteria, 54 months. A majority of colleges have internship, and the Indian Embassy China has also published list of 45 colleges which teach the course in English. Only concern here is that the exit examination for you to get a license to work in China is in Chinese language. So unless the candidate clears that, he or she will not be allowed to get a license to practice in China. And in lieu of that, he or she will not be allowed to kind of work back here in India. So these are things which we have to kind of keep in mind when you are deciding on a country outside India. Also, the best part is NMC earlier, prior to 2021, used to have a list of medical colleges on their website, which the course was recognized. Now they do not put up any list. On top of it, they are, broadly mentioning on their website that any variation in duration, median of instruction, syllabus, clinical training, internship uh, is not as per the FMGL guidelines. It will directly lead to disqualification of getting a registration in India. And currently there is a court case going on in Patna High Court, where the student has challenged it, and NMC, only because obviously you have to show a legal proof. So what they have presented as a proof is 2021, and from then on, every year before the NEET or after the NEET, they do make kind of an announcement. Even last 2 weeks there was an announcement both on Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, reiterating all of these points itself, and that was the proof attached in their court argument by the NMC lawyers. And obviously that student has currently in the High Court lost the case for her to get a for her to kind of practice in India. So that is something we have to kind of keep in mind, that these guidelines of NMC at this point of time are kind of non-negotiable. Now, when we talk about the MBBS country matrix, so this is, this particular thing I'm talking from the quality and budget perspective. So which all countries and, what is the overall scenario. So I always say that budget friendly, most government colleges in India, and high in quality. And when I say quality, primarily only reason is because there's so much of shortage of, I would say, staff in India. So high patient load, so that is one reason why, one, I mean, I would say we have a big advantage in India. And because of that, the opportunity of kind of cadavers which we get during anatomy dissection, that is very high. Except for India and China, majority of countries, the challenge is to get those cadavers, and hence most of the colleges, operate on 3D organon and those kind of softwares, or there are mannequins which are utilized. So the hands-on exposure what we get is the highest right now in India, and hence obviously India, I would always place it as number one. In terms of the quality high, but obviously budget is on the higher side, is few private medical colleges in India. And in medicine, I would say that is the only place where I will say course career, where usually people who are going abroad might not have good budgets. So unlike other programs, when I talk about non-English speaking country, so that is something we have to understand, that in medicine, people, there are two category of colleges when you talk about MBBS abroad. One would be obviously high on budget, and obviously good on quality. And second, obviously, is low on budget but low also on quality. So that is something we also have to kind of understand, that in medicine, just because students don't get into private medical colleges in India, and which are very expensive, which is why they look at these countries where the tuition fee can be as less as 2 lakhs per year to about 20 lakhs, depending on which country they. But challenge obviously is the quality, and which is why NMC came up with the strong guidelines. So if we have to decide, based on, let's say, a particular college, how do we do that? So what are the tools? That is what we'll be kind of discussing next. And obviously, if there are any specific questions, I would take it at the end, because I'm hoping mostly towards the end of the presentation, most of my questions would be answered. But yes, I'll be happy to take up any specific questions you have, which has to be kind of discussed. All right. So if I talk about the education system, okay, so there are broadly American and I would say Europe-based education system. So one obviously is the US, Canada, Philippines model, where you are a NEET UG candidate and you appear for your SATs and ACTs and these examinations. Then do a BS program, which is for a period of 4 years. In case of the Caribbean med schools or the Philippines, they have a 2-year program of BS, after which you appear for an MCAT examination. So both in US and Canada. And in case of Philippines, it's an NMAT exam. And that basically is a grad entry program. So actual MD program is for 4 years in the US and Canada. Now, one thing we have to kind of keep in mind that if you want to practice in India, just after the MD program, you cannot, because one of the rule by NMC is that, your degrees in UK, US, Australia, New Zealand will be recognized, but you also have to do PG in the same country. So if the student wants to kind of, after completing their MBBS or let's say MD in the US, if they have to come back and work in India, the degree might not be recognized. Now, important thing to also understand is the competition year. First of all, 4 years of BS and 4 years of MD makes it about 8-year program. And I've spoken to a couple of NRIs, who have kind of actually pursued the course there, and some of them who are international students have pursued that. Roughly, they're spending about 4 CR in this education versus the same program. If they do it in India, 5.5 years, and under NRI quota, it can be anything between 1.5 to 2.5 CR. So they are almost saving 50% of money and completing in 5.5. And another important point here is if you see the MCAT, results on the AAMC website, roughly around 70,000 students are writing, and according to that data, roughly around 5 to 10% students only are international students who are enrolling into a medical school. So that ratio of people who are appearing versus people getting into the medical school is very small, and which is why even in the US, people who want to be kind of sure shot that they really don't want to risk their medicine as a ultimate program, because others then move to, maybe they give the DAT and get into a dental school, or some other choice, or continue with their BS and do an MS or PhD into the sciences which they have picked up. But let's say if you want to be sure shot, that's where another model which propped up out of the need of the high demand, or let's say competition in the American medical system, is the Caribbean med school system, where they have combined this BS into 2 years, and then the first 2 years of MBBS, which is called as basic medical sciences. These 2 years happen in any of the Caribbean islands, and the final 2 years, that is your clinical rotations, these happen in any of the American hospitals. So you might see a lot of universities in Caribbean, which also promote their programs here in India. There are many colleges in Ireland. Most of them I would strongly not recommend. I would say hardly 2, 3 who are like really genuine. One important thing you again have to keep in mind, if it will be a Caribbean med school model, if you are not doing your final 2 years in your same home country, the students are not meeting, you will not be allowed to work in India. The solution what these island universities have bought is that you do this 2 years rotation on the island itself. Now it's a very small island with hardly any population, so the kind of clinical exposure the candidate might get might not be really great in terms of his future employability prospects as well. So this Caribbean route model is always only recommended for candidates who are very clear if they would never want to come back to India, or if they choose only the top 3, 4 medical schools where the match rates, the post graduation residency match rates are really high. Otherwise, we would want to kind of avoid those places. And there have been instances where I've met like very, very senior doctors practicing in India. Their sons and daughters have got admission in India, but for some fascination, they took admission in Caribbean Mid School. And there were a list of things which I mentioned which might go wrong. And after 1 year, they came back in the same counseling round and they agreed. But unfortunately, by then they lost the seat in India. So that is why it is very much important that you just don't go by the fascination or the tourism or how the campuses look in these islands, but rather focus on the actual study and learning, which is again a challenge. Also to keep in mind, in these models, compared to a student in India after grade 12, almost because of the NMC's CBME curriculum, their early clinical exposure happens as early as first or second year of medical school itself. Versus anybody going into these American or the Caribbean program, the first time they encounter a live patient is only after 4 years. So almost at the fifth year of their grade 12th is when they first time see a live patient. So that is why Indian physicians are very much in demand, whether it's the US, UK, or any other part. Those who have done MBBS from India. So that is something I would just want to kind of keep in mind. Now, when you talk about the European system, again, when I say again a NEET UG candidate, most of the programs in Europe would be about 6 years. Now the challenge is NMC has not given us a clear-cut mandate on which countries they will recognize, which they will not. So onus upon candidate, if they join an NMC recognized program, then they can prepare for PG in US, UK, or maybe prepare for PG in Middle East, right? And if they sorry other way around, if they join the NMC recognized program, that's when they can write the FMG exam, and then if they clear the FMG, then they have to do a 1 year of internship and then can practice in India. And if they don't clear the FMG pass rates are again only 22%, then they cannot practice in India. And if they join an NMC not recognized program, then obviously you have to look for a PG in US or UK, or you are preparing for a PG in Middle East or Europe, which is like hardly any seat. So I will also talk about the PG piece of it, because you have to stitch MBBS and PG when you are deciding on any of the careers. So that is something again very important for us to kind of understand. So coming back to the FMG hurdle, first of all, who writes the FMG examination? So any student who goes for MBBS abroad, except for those who have done their MBBS from Australia, Canada, New Zealand, UK, USA. And so one thing is they have done the UG there, and in lieu of that, continued their studies and also completed post-graduation from that country. Those students are exempted from the FMG examination. Otherwise, everybody have to write the foreign med grade examination, where, important thing is it's the pass rate for the last, 5 years, average year on year has only been 22%. And post completion of FMG, you have to go for a supervised internship. So again, on my social media, I've mentioned another challenge also is that once you kind of clear your FMG examination, you have to go for a registration with the state medical board. And these state medical boards decide when they can allot internship within their states for the FMG candidates. And in past, it has happened that there were students, from certain states in in India, where they had to wait for roughly around 8 months to 12 months just to get an internship, because the state medical board never had allocated number of seats or time to possibly create those quotas where they could admit these FMGs for the internship. So that is something we have to also kind of keep in mind. So the journey delays only at an undergrad level roughly around about 8 years after your grade 12. So that is something we have to kind of keep in mind. Now, how do we choose a medical college? Now, whether it will be in India or outside India, what is the relevant tool and what should be the parameter we should keep in mind? One technical, and then obviously we talk on, when you are looking at medical colleges in India. Now, globally, I always say that the college has to be listed in the World Directory of Medical School and minimum of 20 years of operational experience. Now, whether it is in India or outside India, we've seen many cases where NMC, is very, very strict on their, regulations, and operationally very, very new colleges. And for some reason, they're not able to meet those criterias. And like, the students have to be then shifted to other medical colleges. So there have been cases where the seats have been, they've been recommended to, stop the operation midway. Like, where a very famous case was a private medical college in Meerut, Subharti Medical College, where the operations had to be stopped midway, and the students had to be transferred to LLRM and nearby medical colleges. So that is something I also recommend. Language of instruction obviously should be in English, and check for the NMC FMGL guidelines point by point, and communicate directly with the university officials. Identify a sizable alumni working in India and globally. Lot of these agents would recommend that, okay, you know what, go to an next country, outside, and there are so many students studying in US, UK from this college. Now we are in the day and age of social media. Open LinkedIn, open, any of the social media. You see actually whether these students have any candidates working in those countries or not. So I would just quickly show you the demo because this is important for how you kind of navigate the world directory of medical school. So if you go to the world directory and you can check for any country, let's say if we were to just see for India, because the reason I'm saying it in India also, our assumption is we recognize every college, right? But the challenge is that if you are looking to then do post graduation outside India, not all colleges are equally recognized. So, for example, we have AIMS, all of the new AIMS, right? So many AIMS have started. So this is an AIMS Bilaspur. So if you see government college, this is where we see whether the college is private or government, year of instruction, whether it started in which year, 2020. This is the place where you get the actual school website, the authentic website. Many times, it happens when the colleges are in Russia, Ukraine, or any of the non-English speaking countries. The website looks as if it is, the university website, but it is run by some local agents in India, and that website is completely controlled. Where the whatever queries you actually ask, the agent answers it. So you have to be very careful, and only this world directory should be the actual source of referring to the people or the email IDs of the actual college. So obviously program details, when the instruction happened, your curriculum, English, sponsor note. Now, if you see this, this is blank. So a student getting into AIMS Bilaspur for any reason does not get a PG in India and thinks about doing post-graduation outside India. Majority of English-speaking countries might not consider it at this point of time simply because the college is not recognized by World Direct, WFME and ECFMG. So I'll give you another example. Same AIMS Bhopal, 2012, and if you sponsor notes, it is very much recognized both in Canada and US. So these students are from these medical colleges, they'll be definitely allowed to do their post graduation outside India. So this is a very important criteria to be checked when it comes to any medical colleges. Now, this also helps us, especially when it comes to non-English speaking countries, where obviously there's a lot of gray area. How do we decide? So, if you go to the website, public government, no problem. Website is in German, contact information, program details. The language of instruction is completely in German language. So, which means that this particular course will be never recognized by the NMC. Also, majority of educational board across the world, if the language of instruction is not in English, might not recognize it. So, at this point of time, students who do their post graduation from Germany can easily practice in Germany, Switzerland, Austria, these three countries. Rest, obviously, unless because that language of instruction is not in English, so that becomes a challenge. So that is why you also need to stitch around these factors, in terms of when you are choosing medicine as a career option. So I've been always saying that one thing is obviously these technicalities. Second, obviously the patient population. A lot of time people say, smaller countries like Singapore or Australia. Now, I always say we produce one Australia every year. So, and especially when it comes to undergrad, if the foundation is strong, it really helps. As I said, for anatomy, dissections, or for that matter, the hands-on exposure to various clinical procedures. For that, Indian students and their experiences are highly appreciated across the. So that is something I would consider regarding the medical school outside India and or also in India. Now, just a quick data at glance. Currently there are 823 registered medical colleges as per the National Medical Commission, but there are only 763 registered in the World Directory. So, there are almost new 60 colleges which are not even registered at this point of time in the World Directory. And there are only 459 colleges which are at this point of time approved by ECFMG, US and Canada, which means that students only from these colleges would be allowed to do a post graduation in and maybe get a license to practice in the GMC UK, or for that matter in US or Canada or any of these countries. So that is why it is very important, even if you wish to study in India, to check out these world directory data, to identify whichever college in your city or state you are looking at, whether they are approved or not. Now, I usually get these questions from parents, what is the actual budget of private medical colleges? Now, this is very important because I just want to run through a little bit of data. Roughly around 23 lakh students will write the NEET UG exam for about 1 lakh 24,000 MBBS, out of which 50% are in government colleges, 50% are in private medical colleges. I mentioned at the start that, we not, I mean, just MBBS is not enough. So you always also have to think about post graduation. So at the PG level, every year there is a NEET PG examination where roughly around 2.5 lakh students are writing the post graduation for about 83,000 PGs. Again, half in government, half in private. But the only challenge here is at the MBBS level, this is one course MBBS. At post-graduation level, students get divided to around 20 to 25 different courses. You might have medicine, surgery, pediatrics, MD, DNB, different programs. So this number is not actually, the actual number in terms of, the students. So what I try to say in any medical college also, that if let's say there's a batch of 100 students starting in first year of MBBS, and entire 100 students say they want to do MD medicine, it might not be possible. So roughly around 5% of students only can do a particular clinical specialization. Again, just doing MD is also not enough. These days people are looking at DM or MCH. So in India, there is a third examination called as NEET super specialization, where roughly around 30,000 candidates write this examination for roughly around 6,000 seats, for DM or MCA. So if you understand from this, the funnel is going, tapering year on year first. Second, if it is India, it is minimum 5.5 years, 3 years of post graduation, and 3 years of super specialization. So this is almost like a commitment of 11 to 12 years, medicine as a career. If it's going to be outside India, you'll have to add at least 3 to 4 more years, depending on, again, here I'm assuming that the students do not have any drop years at UG, NEET PG, or NEET super specialization level, and they get the admission in the first attempt. The reason for me to explain this math is to also understand, if you are looking at any private medical colleges in India, what should be your real budget? So UG fees for private is about 80 lakhs to 1.25 CR in terms of the undergrad tuition fees. And again, because of the seats, the observation has been that 75% of private med school students get into a private medical college itself for post graduation, simply because the math doesn't add up in terms of the number of seats. And at the PG level, the fees is roughly around 1.5 CR to about 7 CR for specialties like radiology. So, I always tell the parents that a real budget, if you are entering into any Indian private medical college, should be about 3 to 4 crore. So the reason I discuss this, amount is because now the debate is whether in this particular, I would say, budget, I do a UG plus PG in India, which is globally recognized, and I can kind of work in multiple countries because our PG is also recognized in most of the English speaking countries, versus I only do undergraduation in, let's say, UK, Ireland, and any of these countries, with that kind of a budget. So that is again a discretion of the parents how they would want to figure out in terms of their choices. So globally, what happens is that I said that you have to stitch UG plus PG. So whichever country you kind of want to practice, you should have a license to practice, have a license examination. But our assumption is that the country in which we go for MBBS, the same country we might do a PG, and the same country we might settle. That might not be true, depending on the current job and the healthcare requirements. So I always tell people that post graduation and job, these are two different things. There are some countries where you can do post graduation depending on the number of seats available, and there are some countries where after having a PG degree from a country which is globally recognized, you might do a job. So for post graduation, India, as I said, it's NEET PG. Government was trying to roll out the next examination back in 2019. Just last week, there was again a meeting of the NMC officials, and the discussion was that they don't want to launch next as another hodgepodge project. They said that do a thorough this thing, and only then they might come up. So again, the NMC chairman is very clear that there should obviously there will be so much of resistance, because moment the next or an exit exam launches in India, would mean that every private med school student will also have to write this examination, and that becomes like a very difficult scenario because how many of students could actually clear that? Because an exit exam would mean only if you clear the exit examination you can practice in a country. Right now in India, we don't have that. As long as you pass the final years, you can practice, and NEET PG is optional. Next would mean that you have to clear the license examination. In case of United States, the exam is USMLE, United States Medical License Examination, where the first step preparation starts in first and second year of MBBS, and people appear the first step in third year of MBBS, either they are in India or doing a med school in any of the international countries. And the final step can be given in internship or after graduation, and then the various other steps for the residency application. In case of UK, the PLAB examination only after the final year, so after you graduate, so that's when you can kind of appear the examination. In Germany, there are exams called as Fastprüfung and Condensprüfung, but before you write these examinations, they are expecting you to know B1, B2, C1, C2. These three, I mean, these all levels, not just like A1, A2, but A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, and then you can appear FSP, nothing but medical terminology in German language, and KSP, which is a PG entrance exam, and then you get a practice in Germany. There are countries where if you already have a PG, you can work. So, for example, Canada, where you have a license exam called as MECI, Medical Council of Canada Evaluation Exam. Australia has Australian Medical Council examination. New Zealand has New Zealand registration exam, and Dubai has Dubai Health Authority of Abu Dhabi, MOH. There are different examinations. Lot of these, if you have like degrees from certain countries, let's say you have a US, UK degree, and you might be exempted from these examinations in Dubai. And the post graduation from India, from US, from UK are very much recognized in these countries. So these countries might not have that many medical seats for post graduation, but they have a huge physician shortage. So they'll be more than happy to accept you if you have given the license exam of these countries and then come to work in these countries. Now, why do I say? I mean, we talk on the numbers. So, I mean, in fact, I think we have to first talk on the post-graduation numbers, and then we come back to the alternate career. So, if you see the post-graduation seats, India for MD medicine has roughly around 4,767 seats, so roughly around 5,000 seats. Canada has a quota of only 52 seats for international medical graduates. In America, there's no quota, but obviously there are some, I would say 20-30% of hospitals which do not sponsor the visa. But otherwise, there is no specific quota. In UK, around 1670 seats. Again, there's no predefined quota, but a medical prioritization bill has been passed in January of 25, which means that for the PG admissions, first they will consider graduates from UK, I mean medical college graduates, irrespective of the citizenship. Ireland, followed by their allied countries, and then comes the rest of the world. So that is something you have to keep in mind. In terms of surgery, 4,200 seats in India. Canada has a quota of 4 seats. US has only 1,600 seats. UK has only 600. Again, whatever number we see here in India, you'll have to divide by one third. One third goes in merit, one third in obviously the paid seats, and one third in different types of quota. So actually, in general medicine in India, there are only about 1,500 to 1,800 seats. So is in surgery. So that is something also we have to keep in mind when we are talking about medical post graduation. And mind you, globally, the highest number of PhD seats are only in India. So you should never leave India as an option, because if you have a post graduation, directly again in Australia, there is a specialist pathway under which you can directly get a license to work in Australia as long as you've cleared the AMC and you got an AHPRA registration. But for that, initially, obviously, you require a post graduation. So that is why I say always keep India as your first option. US is roughly around 40,000, residency positions, and UK roughly around between 9 to 12,000 in foundation and your specialty years. So that is the total number. This is like in the number one, number two, and number three. Rest will be, I would say, less than 4 and 5,000 seats across, and which will have involved like various quotas and everything. So this is something I would also want you to keep in mind when you are taking a call. So then we are talking about the MBBS career matrix. So if we kind of understand what is the actual career funnel. So you might do your MBBS from India, Russia, China, UK, any of these countries. But the realistic in terms of the actual data and number of seats, if you are looking at clinical PG, then obviously it's only India, US, and UK, because rest of the countries it just appears, but in realistic base, the number of seats are none to negligible. So that is something we have to kind of keep in mind. And obviously, after having a PG, you can work in multiple countries. I mean, that is not an issue. So this pathway have to be clear from MBBS, clinical PG, and job perspective if you are considering a clinical license to practice route. Now, there are cases where people don't want to continue medicine anymore. They want to work as a consultant, or they want to get into paraclinical, clinical research, medical writing. Just for your information, right now in India, major pharma companies are starting their GCC, global capacity centers, and India has become like a hub for uh, bio tech and clinical research. So there are a lot of physicians who are required in these domain as well, and that is why NMC also in their curriculum is pushing early exposure to research. So other than ICMR scholarship programs, there are other opportunities which NMC wants to get in the curriculum itself. So what I'm trying to say is that yes, alternatively, if because when I interact with students in medical schools, many a times they are in the program with the initial excitement, but as the years pass in, because you're almost spending half a decade, priorities change, and sometimes people are clear and they come to me that, I'll do anything but clinical. I might not want to practice. I want to get into consulting roles, or I want to get into clinical informatics, healthcare data science. A lot of students, obviously, I make them do smaller courses first to get understanding of IT and math, whether they are comfortable. And if they are, then we help them with the masters as well. But yeah, so these are opportunities also which the students can consider. However, the low cost country option, where students are stuck with, let's say having a degree which might not be recognized in India, and hence in lieu of that, not able to, and mind you, I talk this from an experience where one of the project where I was working, we were teaching parallel Indian medical college curriculum to students studying in China, Russia, Ukraine, Philippines, Georgia. The education levels are so poor that they were not able to understand the Indian medical college curriculum. So the assumption that if India might not be the option, the student will settle in UK, US is very, very, I would say, ambiguous simply because the American medical license exam or the UK GMC and further on the examination, they are not that easy. So that is something we also have to keep in mind. And hence, there are so many students in India who are no longer, I mean, they have a degree on paper in hand. Right now, that number is about 30,000. 30,000 such people who have a degree in hand, but they are not a licensed physician, which means they can either do these programs or they can work as a virtual scribe. That's $1 billion industry. Couple of listed companies in our stock markets who are hiring these people. Medical coder, pharmaceutical sales and service managers. Unfortunately, many of them are MBBS abroad agents and content creators on YouTube because obviously they cannot work clinically. So this is the reality. In fact, to the extent that there are some medical schools where if you want to academically progress from year one to year two, you'll have to recommend or refer at least two students from your villages. So that is the challenge or the reality at this point of time. So that is something you have to also kind of consider when you are planning. So broadly, MBBS abroad in low cost countries is not black and white. A lot of uh, scams happening, especially when we cannot see the offer letter, which is not in English language. So there is a lot of agencies which just produce offer letter from X university. Moment the student land in that country, they say, okay, this is not happening. You can go to Y university. So because and you cannot read in English, right? So it is very important to verify. Even Indian embassies are saying, because in all the non-English speaking countries, the people you meet here in India, they are just the representative agents. In reality, there are master contractors. Many of them are Indians itself who are running the show where they upfront buy 200, 300 seats. So because of that, the challenge is that, agents can promise you anything, but it's upon the contractor how he wants to deal with you later. So the budgets and everything goes for a toss. So that is something I would say you have to kind of keep in mind when it comes to low cost countries, and there have been so many media reports of, people been claiming the entire education happening in, English, but it happened in, let's say, Russian language, or it happened in Noida where people were, on Instagram Meal, it was promoted in 2024 that medical PG is happening in Spain. And this is very common in Germany, Europe, these places where uh, the students were taken from India, admitted into language school for 6 months, 9 months, nothing was happening. When they reached out to the parents here, obviously the agent had shut their shops, and what there was no sight of a medical PG happening. It was only that the students were admitted into a language school in Spain. So that is very commonly happening in the day and age of social media. So we just have to be a little careful on those lines. No, most of the Caribbean med schools, I would say you might want to avoid in terms of quality and the challenges. Again, offer letters and fake offer letters. NMC has been regularly publicizing them. So these are few things I just want you guys to be very careful if you have to select. Then obviously there are cases where people have been charged extra fees, hostel fees. So uh, when students had gone, they had promised, let's say, a budget of 30 lakhs. By the time they completed the program, the budget overshoot to 50 lakh. And these are people who are, kind of taking big loans, education loans, and that kind of thing. So these are real challenges which you have to also kind of keep in mind. Indian embassy has been regularly this information, but it's still happening. So these are a few things I just wanted to kind of highlight. So my conclusion is very, very simple that, the tools of World Directory, and then kind of take a call, because right now, as you see, last 5 years, there are 25,000 students who spend about 20 lakh rupees towards MBBS abroad, but they are basically, they just have a paper degree. So that is what I wanted to, talk about today. Obviously, now I'm open to any questions anybody has, happy to discuss.
Chirag, thank you so much for that. We will have questions. Shall we take the parents first?
Yeah, please, please, please.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
we have two parent speakers with us
sure.
today. So we would like to hear the experiences once and then open the floor to questions. All right. So is Dr. Chintamani and Dr. Sudeep Rai here? Just unmute yourselves, please, and turn on the videos.
Unmute, unmute, unmute.
Yeah, hi. Hello, Chintamani. We- Okay, are you somewhere? Okay. Uh,
जैसा आपकी इच्छा हो वैसे हेलो
yeah. Chintamani, can you speak now? Hello.
I have asked them to unmute. I
Yeah.
don't. One second. Let me try again
I think
because
even uh,
Yeah, can you hear me, Sapna?
yeah, we can hear
yeah,
you.
now we
Yes,
can.
yes. So, Chintamani, I will leave you. Please make your introduction briefly, and then I'll ask you the questions. So, yeah, over to you, Simi.
Yeah, see, I'm as a parent, I'm parent of a first year MBBS student, Ishita, and yeah, I'm a doctor myself, and that's how it is. And I teach in a medical college only as a professor. That's that's
So,
it. Yeah.
actually, Dr. Chintamani Pathak is a professor at Safdarjung Hospital in Delhi, and she specializes in radiology.
Pathology.
Pathology. Okay. So that's the background. What we're going to focus on today is Dr. Pathak's daughter is in first year of medical college, and she's gone through this journey as a parent herself. So I think the first question I had for you, Dr. Pathak, was that your daily job involves working with PG students. All right, that's what you're doing on a
Yeah,
daily basis.
yeah.
In your opinion, what are the main challenges and issues uh, that students that you have are facing in becoming established doctors with a thriving practice? Because that seems to be the goal. Everybody thinks once you're into medical college, you're going to have a great practice. Uh, so,
Uh,
uh, what is
yeah.
that? Yeah.
The scenario is actually changing with lot many new medical colleges coming up. I mean, as parents of students of 11th and 12th, the parents feel good. Yeah, now more seats are opening up, and people are getting admissions and opportunities are more. Yes, opportunities are more. At the same time, after MBBS, the PG students they are facing issues like the job is that much, the market is there it is, and we're producing a lot. So the competition is huge, huge. And so again, it's about demand and supply, and everybody, even if it's from a remote, because the government is opening up colleges in in small areas and all that. But after becoming a doctor, everybody wants to practice in a better place, in a more advanced place. They all migrating. Most of them they want to I mean practice in cities, and nobody wants to go back because what you just have your stethoscope. You don't have the setup for that. So the bigger places, they are saturated. The job is being less. So there's a lot of competition. As of now, yes, it's still okay. But by the time they come out, because for senior after PG residency, they go for senior residency, wherein they have the 3 years of experience as a teacher or non-teacher, wherever they work. So for that also, if there is one seat and about 10 people are competing. So earlier, almost everybody used to get senior residency, but it's really becoming difficult. Once they pass out, then they realize the real challenge starts now. So yes, it is good, but yes, that is one big concern as a parent and for the students.
The other question I wanted to ask you is that you must be getting students from government colleges and private colleges. I mean, do you see
Mhm.
quality difference? What are your thoughts on this?
Again, see, in government college, it's not that all students are they are coming out bright, and even in private, it's not that they are not there. It's about as I would experience that would like we like to send our kids to a private school. Why? Because you feel, I mean, the education is better, the teachers are more accountable, the classes are held more regularly, and the same applies to the colleges also. So I would not say the private is bad. Yes, there are some colleges where classes are not held. But if I'm talking about a good college, because we send our students to good private, there are private colleges, I mean schools which are not good, but we send our kids to good private schools. So similarly, the good private medical colleges are. I would say, I mean, would be preferable as a parent or even as a teacher, I would know, because not all government colleges, it's the same scenario, as I said, schools and colleges. Okay, now coming back to my PGs, if they're passing out from government or the private. So now I work in a VMMC sub-division hospital where the high rankers come. So even if the student is coming from a private, they're high rankers. So ultimately, the good pool of students are coming. So there is no difference between government or private. And sometimes I feel the ones who are coming from the good private colleges, the more knowledgeable. The concept is better because it's the way they're trained. So, so if I'm talking about good colleges, private versus medical, there is no difference. It's about the money, I guess. And of course, the students there is, I mean, from education point of view, yes, both are equally good. I'm talking about a good one
Yeah.
again.
Great. You yourself are a doctor. You teach so many doctors every year. I don't know, hundreds of doctors you've taught through your career.
Mm-hmm.
What, but still, when you put your daughter in to medical
Mm-hmm.
college, the
Mm-hmm.
whole process began. What was some
Mm-hmm.
of your learnings as a parent who's doing this journey of trying to get a child into a medical college?
Yeah. See, first of all, the need rank counts a lot. That is no, it's not question. I mean, there is no doubt about it. If the child secures a good rank, there's nothing like that. Okay. So as a parent, the criteria was, of course, if she was a very high ranker, I would prefer a government medical college and one of the good medical colleges and one of the good cities, which unfortunately don't happen. So I had the option of now putting her in a college which is not the best of college in the best of cities. So as a parent, and especially as a parent of a girl child or daughter, I wanted her to be comfortable in a good place. The hostels have to be good. The surrounding has to be good. It has to be safe. So for that, I chose these were my criteria. See, the place has to be good. Of course, the college has to be good as well as the place has to be good. So if it's a government in that kind of a scenario, I was okay. But otherwise, it will be private. So my daughter could have got one of those colleges which are, remotely situated, one of the new colleges which are not really established, don't know the outcome, and, remotely where probably the food and hostel and electricity all could be compromised. So her scenario would be different. So I chose a place, each to his own. I wanted her to be secure in a comfortable place. The infrastructure should be good. Of course, all medical, we have to see the infrastructure, where the child is, what they're learning, and also the bond and all that. So if there's any bond, there isn't any bond. So that is also taken into considered. And also how old the college is, what is the outcome of the students of that college. So all those were taken into consideration.
Great. Thank you so much, Chintamani. Thank you. And we'll
Thank you
take
so much.
questions later.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
and
Yeah.
now I'll invite Mr. Sudeep Roy. Sir, are you online?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, Mr. Rai? Okay, we can start the questions. I'll just call him up and check where he
Yeah,
is.
Sapna, he was there, but I think he's not. I don't see him. So he might have
I'll check.
gotten
I'll check with
disconnected.
him.
Yeah,
Till
thank
then,
you.
we can start with the questions.
I think Chirag, so Aparna has a question. What about quality and faculty? Sorry, before that, I think, okay, my daughter is in IB with bio, math, chemistry, HL, but no physics. Can she sit for NEET? She can't, isn't it right, Chirag?
So that's what people are doing. They are via open board. They are writing the physics examination. That is
Yeah.
the
So
yeah. I mean, just without physics, she cannot.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
think Mr. Suman, I'm sorry, I don't know who's unmuted. So yeah, physics, chemistry, and bio are a requirement. So those of you with youngest children, if you are in IB, that
बदमाश है
would be a
कौन
non-regular
इधर आ
that would be a non-regular diploma. Or as Chirag said, you can do the one of the papers through NIOS. Um, Okay, and then what about faculty quality and facilities in new medical colleges?
So that,
Yes, Meena, I will go back to the top and chat. Thank you for the questions.
yeah,
But in
yeah.
the meantime, I'll request
No,
Chirag
that
to,
that
yeah,
that that is exactly what even Chintamani ma'am mentioned, right? It is, and in
yeah.
fact, that is what I had actually created a video on my Insta also called as white coat, where I'm saying, physically visit every med school, check out the infrastructure. More importantly, even the internet connection, because a lot of teaching now is happening online. While students are studying in med school, lot of their coaching and other things are happening online, and there is no good access to internet. Certain times the internet only works in the library, but not be great in their hostels. So that's why it's always advisable to physically visit. Faculties is a very big challenge, but I would not say blanket that okay every med school. That's why I said the top good private med schools also is great. It's not that, and correctly again, what I mentioned, that in the remote areas, government colleges, that is what I would want to avoid. So any new government med school or a private med school which started in last 5 to 10 years, you could avoid simply because their one batch is not over, right? So we don't know the outcome, career outcome. Plus, if at all they are looking to do anything outside India, they usually, if there is an alumni base, for example, somebody from KMC Manipal or any of these MGM, so there's a huge alumni base, AIMS or MMC, Lady Harding. There's a huge alumni base outside India also. So for recruiters, whether the program directors in US, UK, it becomes very easy because they know the quality will be great. So usually they don't prefer very newly open med school graduates. So that is something also you'll have to keep in mind.
Yeah. Would you have any recommendation for private colleges in India which are good?
Blanket, and again, I mean, in an open session, I might not be able to give exact names, but yeah, I mean, as I said,
Yeah, maybe
Once
we'll
we
switch.
get the other parent speaker, I think he's done a mini thesis on this. He'll be happy to share some.
yeah, please,
Okay,
Um,
please.
has he joined?
Not yet. Whenever he
Okay, all
can.
right.
Okay.
Okay, and then maybe at the end we can also switch off the recording and
There were two
if
questions, Rami, on the top about what about Sri Lanka and what about Italy? I think we can cover those two, Chirag.
Yeah, so
yeah,
again, so NMC is very clear, right? So what happens is they are saying that the curriculum should exactly replicate the way it happens in India. Now that is something we are not sure in terms of Sri Lanka, whether they'll exactly map the curriculum or not. And frankly, we don't have that many queries of students who are going to. So in past, people would used to go to Nepal or Bangladesh. Again the same thing they are stuck is that whether their medical council allows the students to work in that country. So the Sri Lankan medical code shall allow a graduate from a Sri Lankan medical school to work in Sri Lanka. Like they should have a foreign medical graduate practicing policy, which most of these countries do not have. So that is one point. Now when you talk about Italy, again it's like Germany, right? So what happens is the promotion in the market is that you write your IMAT examination and you get a free of cost course. But hardly, I would say, 2 to 5% of students are really getting free of cost. Most of them are getting into private medicine. So then, majority of cases we have seen that people never come back to India because they are in private med school. Then the promise of agent is that something will happen in UK and US. I've seen few cases where people have got a foundation admission in UK, but I don't know whether it is for the entire batch or not. That is something you have to be very careful. So, but yes, there are few private medical schools, but again, spending 60, 70 lakhs there versus some other place. That's the question.
So I think, Chirag, one thing that you can say, especially say about countries like Italy and all, they're not as bad a situation as the Russia or the China, those kind of
100%. Yes.
countries, right?
Yes.
It's much better off.
Yes.
And while practicing back in India may be a challenge,
Right.
finding jobs within Europe, of course, depending on the job market
Right.
and stuff, that is quite
Yeah,
possible.
yeah. So that's where I say the filter should be private med school or government. If it is private, also it's fine. And if the language of instruction for the entire 5 years is in English, if those criteria are there, then obviously it becomes easy for the GMC UK license as well.
Right. One question that Aparna has is the NIRF ranking the definite guide to choosing a medical university in India?
I mean, see, again, so I mean, I might have the infrastructure, in terms of the physical college and all of those things, or maybe hostels. But what about the faculties? So at times, it is misleading. So that's what I would say. I would not go, because again, when we are saying, when in the counseling round, we have to put like X number of colleges in terms of our preference orders, and depending on our particular ward's need score. So again, I would always say, irrespective of the ranking, visiting physically, both at a UG and a PG level. I've had experiences where parents have written a NEET PG, got a seat in a private med school in India, and my point was, when they visited the college, saw the campus, there were hardly any patients. Like it was like, morning, I would say around 11:30, 12 in the morning, and the entire campus was as if everybody's on a vacation. So the point is, it cannot be a haunting campus, right? So that is the challenge. So majority of I mean, I would not say majority, but there are definitely such colleges where patient load is very less, and it also become very important to be kept in mind that certain colleges have a satellite centers which they have kind of I would say take adopted. For example, when you say DY Patil in Navi Mumbai, they not only manage the Navi Mumbai, but they have adopted the Rajawadi Hospital in Ghatkopar. So there is ample amount of patient exposure what you get versus some other medical college. So these are also few things which we also have to consider. And I would say the best way would be to physically speak to a student who is already in the med school or visit the campuses.
Okay. What are the other questions, Ramya? Can you take them? I'll just.
Okay, so I think we have Manipal in Malaysia. Any thoughts on Savita? Okay, so I think, like we said about now, I think the individual things we will maybe see after we switch off the recording if we want to opine on it. Does India allow foreigners to practice in India?
Absolutely. So that is
Yeah.
where, so since 2019, when all the changes have come and the CPME regulations have come, India now has come up with a policy where foreign physicians will have to get registered with the NMC, and it will be a standard protocol the way it happens for any of the Western countries, that you'll have to get a license to practice. They'll map the equivalency of their credentials, and then they'll be allowed to practice. So that law has already been passed by NMC, I think about 2 years.
Okay. Right now, I don't see any other questions as such. I think if parents who are not counselors, if you have questions, please do put it in the chat box. I see we have a lot of questions from fellow counselors. So, if you're a parent, please do put the questions. Was Dr. Sudeep able to join?
He's not able to join now. He's got busy with something.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So maybe that's something we will just record or something and add on to this if he is able to spare us some free time later. And I think there were questions. So I will switch off the recording. Okay, actually, maybe before that, considering the jobs in India are not many, what are your views about job prospects in Europe?
Again, the same thing, right? So you have to stitch the post graduation. If you have a post graduation from India, then you are looking at mobility of jobs in the Middle East. Now, obviously, due to geopolitics, there are different challenges. Otherwise, where usually Indian doctors are in demand, obviously Europe, Middle East, Australia, New Zealand, no issues. No. But the criteria is, so what has happened is that many a times we have seen people just having an undergrad degree and getting into the healthcare system for jobs, whether it will be anywhere outside India. And I get calls from there 5 years down the line that now, initially, obviously, there was a workload in terms of new learnings, or even in terms of the earnings, they were, it was great. But at about 5 years after that, they hit a plateau. So unless you have a post graduation, it will be very difficult to then lead a team or become an HOD of a particular unit. So that's why I always say stitch your PG as well. So that is something I would strongly recommend.
Yep. And there's a question about exchange student can you study as an exchange student in a university in a country such as US?
In medicine, there is a formal route called as clinical electives. So most of my students who are in medical colleges across India, in the internship year, depending on what specialization they want to do their post-graduation residency in, they go for their clinical rotation in medicine, surgery, OBGY, and that's the specialties. So that is what we help placements in American hospital, Harvard, Stanford, Yale. All the hospitals have their set kind of TOEFL examination, USMLE Step 1 as a prerequisite. So, and then people do go for these rotations. And in fact, that's mandatory with two purposes. Then when they go for these clinical electives, they get something called a letter of recommendation from those physicians, which becomes part of their application for the residency or a PG program, what we call at the end.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dheeraj, do you want to? Yes, please go ahead.
You're muted.
Sorry,
I
you're
can't hear you.
mute. You're, and you are unmuted. I don't know, but we
Yeah,
can't hear you.
but we can't hear you.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, we can hear you.
All right. So just this was a working day. This came as a last minute thing. Can you share this recording so that we can go through again during the weekend and
Eh,
if there are any back?
Yes,
Be
of
on
course.
the
So
website.
all our sessions are recorded and posted on our YouTube channel as well as our website. It's
Nice.
www.guidingteens.in. And if you're not already on our WhatsApp, if you are a parent, please do. The link to join the WhatsApp is on the website. We request that only if you are a parent you join, because it is meant to be a safe space for parents to discuss these things. I know there are a lot of counselors in here, so I am going to repeat myself. It is really for parents. So, but yes, the recording will be on the website.
Thank you.
Miss Meena has another question, Chirag. Such students who do their rotation outside India, are they still expected to complete 1 year internship residency in India?
Yeah, so NMC does not give any credits for these exchange, rotations. So what happens is they get an extension. So the rule is that once you complete your final year med school in India, within 2 years you have to complete the 12 months of internship. So if they travel to the US for 3 months, because usually it's only recommended to go for 12 weeks. Like any student spending more than 12 weeks outside their medical school later on cannot apply for residency programs in the entire state of New York. It has the maximum residency position. So we only recommend 3 months, and once they come back, they repeat those 3 months and then continue their. And just I want to add one thing, if I can share screen. Again the question of private and government medical school. When we talk about the quality, one thing is that the US process is very transparent, and you look at any med school, you can see from which medical college of India the students have studied. I'm talking about the post graduation residencies. And you will realize that we will have students from both private and government med schools those students who have done MBBS from both private and government med schools are very much having a license to work, or let's say they are doing post-graduation residencies in the US. So that is one good thing about the Indian medical school, that as again Dr. Chintamani also mentioned, that not all private are bad or not all government are great. So yes, I mean, and that is, I mean, the testament is any of the US hospital, if you open, you can actually see students who are doing their postgraduate residencies in any of these medical schools. And one only thing which I want to just emphasize is the fact that students getting into a private medical college in India, joining or doing a post-graduation residency in US is like a cashback. So whatever money you've invested in your undergraduation private med school, when the students are doing their post-grad residencies in the US, you are getting paid a salary stipend, which actually takes care of your and you're able to save a lot of money. So in the US, there is no tuition fee. So they are going on a J1 work visa, and while they are doing their post-graduation, they are getting paid about 60,000-70,000 US dollars annually while they are doing their post graduation. So ideally, that's what I've been recommending students, that you do a first year, you join any good private med school in India which is approved by the World Directory, and then from first year start preparing for the US license examination and build your profile. Complete your MBBS, you join your PG in the US, and whatever money you've invested in undergrad, it's like it's kind of taken care of. That is what is recommended. All right. Any
Okay.
other questions? Yeah.
No, I think in the interest of time, we've kept you for quite long, Chirag. Thank you so
Mm,
much.
Sure.
I will switch off the
Perfect.
recording now.
Sure. All right.